the top of they didn't include your name. Or is your name Christian?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was your name or the label.
No, that actually is my name.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't have to break the rules just for me, but I appreciate it.
Sure. What do you got for us?
I just had a quick question. You'd mentioned anti-theism on the show before, but I never really got a definition of what that really meant. I went on Iron Chariots as a quick little one, but I was just curious whether or not you or I would, qualify as anti-theists, depending on the belief.
I would, most likely. Yeah, I talked about that just a touch during the belief lecture that I did last month. The labels that we use to define all these various positions don't necessarily always make the most sense. They're not universally used. For some people, it's theist, agnostic, and atheist. And atheist is this position that there are no gods. That's not the definition that I use. It's not the one that I think is most useful. If you're a theist, you have some belief in a God. If your answer to do you believe in a God is no, or I don't know, or anything other than yes, I think you qualify as an atheist. And that means that agnostics, are actually addressing a separate question about knowledge, qualify. Anybody who says they're agnostic is an atheist in that sense. There's another label for that entirely, for everything that's outside of theism, that's gaining some popularity, and that's non-theist. I'm fine with that as well. But if you actually are in the position where you would assert that there are no gods, that you believe that there are no gods, then you would be, that's where I put the anti-theist label. And some people would define that as strong atheism, where you have weak atheism, strong atheism, or negative atheism and positive atheism. The labels are a mess trying to figure out which one to use. I would, depending on the definition, I'd probably describe myself as an anti-theist as well. I not only don't believe in any of the God concepts that I've been presented with, I actually believe there are no gods, at least in any sense that we could possibly understand. Anybody who's come up with a description or a definition of a God, I see no reason to believe it. And when you start thinking about, well, what's left? What sort of God could there be once you've eliminated the ones people are positing? I don't see any room for anything that I think would qualify for God. I mean, we see people all the time who they self-identify as spiritualist or whatever, and they try to reconcile and invent, I guess, a new God that seems to mesh with science and their rational understanding of reality. Generally, I don't find that their definition of God, I don't think it's deserving of the label. It's just this nondescript kind of amorphous blob. Somebody a couple weeks ago tried to do this in email, and to reconcile their understanding of evolution and science with the idea that there is this supreme loving God out there who's also happens to be the creator, and he just used evolution for the purpose of developing consciousness, sentient beings. And to me, this takes the God concept to a whole new level. And what I explained to him was that you've turned God into Wile E. Coyote, because where he's constructed a hat with a wheel on it and strung a wire from a fragile rock to a rock wall and set up a mound of seeds. And when the roadrunner comes along to get those seeds, he's going to balance his head on the wire and stream down and try and time it so that he catches the roadrunner when it's on an upswing. That's just this absurdly complex solution to the problem. And when you say that you've got this God who created a universe in such a way that it looks entirely natural, that it has laws that it obeys, and then he hand constructs and manipulates evolution in order to get to a consciousness, you've created Wile E. Coyote. You've got a God who has power and should have the sort of wisdom and knowledge to come up with a much more efficient plan. If the goal is sentience, and especially sentience on Earth, what the hell's the rest of the universe for? That seems like a colossal waste of effort.
Yeah, and I guess that was my reaction to that whole discussion, was that positing a God in there somewhere, it's a standard theistic evolution claim. And it's like, okay, if you can explain all this with a scientific explanation, where do you fit God in there at all? And what do you think God adds to this whole thing?
Yeah.
You know,
it's kind of like saying, that yes, everything we understand about gravity is scientifically correct, but in addition, there are angels that are pushing the objects around and holding your feet to the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no need to add that to it. It is a violation of Occam's razor, and I don't see where it makes any sense.
No, I agree. The reason I called is because that's about what I thought anti-theism meant, because I figured that was, kind of along the same definition of the Gnostic atheism that you talk about,
right,
in reference to, practical knowledge, that absolute. But I checked on the wiki and stuff, and it actually mentioned that anti-theism, the wiki not being, of course, a true definition necessarily, but it said that it's actually being against the idea of God, or actually saying that the idea of a God was actually harmful. That's why I was kind of confused.
I would actually say that in many respects, believing in gods is a harmful belief. And that is because it causes people to make decisions based on things that aren't true. And so, you have this being that you think is controlling the universe or whatever, and you make decisions based on that, and this thing tells you to kill your kids. And so, and people do.
And under that definition, I might also qualify. That's just not the definition that I think I'd prefer. And there, I think you're coming closer to like anti-religious, and I qualify under that too. I'm opposed to religion for the exact same reason that Jen pointed out. But I think I'd kind of frame that differently and say that in that respect, I'm a rationalist, not a philosophical rationalist, because when you get into the subtleties of that definition, I don't quite fit. But I advocate, as I pointed out at the top of the show, dealing with reality on reality's terms. Is that beliefs that are potentially false, that we hold without good justification, while they may feel good, they may provide comfort in hard times, they may even promote some positive benefits. I'm of the opinion that there's no positive benefits that can be derived from false beliefs that can't also be derived from true beliefs. And I've phrased that differently in the past, where religion has no tangible, real positive benefits that can't also be achieved by secular means.
Okay, I don't want to hog too much of the airtime, but as far as I was actually, another question I had was that specifically in regards to that. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. As far as the challenge to basically, there's nothing that religion that can't have, that secular means can't replicate. Right. The only thing that I was thinking about as a potential kind of pseudo response would be like, what about hope for an afterlife, or hope of divine judgment? Where that's not really, the actual divine judgment is intangible. What about the hope itself? Would that qualify, or how would you respond to that?
I'm not opposed to hope, and I recognize that even false hope can provide real benefits. And the example that I've used before is somebody trapped in a mine shaft that's rapidly losing oxygen. The hope that they may be rescued, even if it's not well supported, may serve a positive benefit. It may calm the individual down, and therefore they use less oxygen, extending the amount of time that they're going to be alive, and then increasing the odds that they could be rescued. It doesn't matter in that case what the actual odds of their rescue are. The thing is, you're extending the likelihood or increasing the likelihood that you be rescued because you're hoping that that's the case. Hope for an afterlife, if somebody wants to do that, I mean, that's fine. It's not like I could possibly stop them, and I'm not necessarily sure that I would, but I'm convinced that the sort of hope, the sort of benefits that you see from those kind of hopes that I would consider false are illusory, and that you would get better and more accurate benefits by dealing with the situation in real terms. So if I've discovered that I'm terminally ill and I have 6 months left to live, if I accept that reality and deal with my illness and sort out my affairs and visit with people that I care about, maybe right some of the wrongs I did, whatever, those are all benefits that you can have either way. The idea that I might survive my death and go on to live forever, I don't know what positive benefit that really provides me, other than, how is that any different from a simple delusion or being injected with heroin? I mean, I can feel good, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's doing me good.
Yeah, the drug argument, that's a pretty good one. I didn't think of that. Okay. Well, that answers my questions pretty well. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Christian. Appreciate the call. We're
Yeah, no
gonna
problem.